Can I ask you something?
Always.
Everywhere I look right now, Iran, the US, missiles, oil prices going crazy, flights being canceled. I feel like I'm supposed to understand what's happening, but honestly, I have no idea how we got here.
That's the thing, right? Everyone's covering what's happening right now, but nobody's really explaining the why, the history behind it.
Exactly, like this didn't just start last month.
Not even close. This has been building for decades. But there's a clear thread you can follow, and once you see it, everything makes a lot more sense.
Okay, take me back. Where does it actually start?
Welcome back to English Untold. I'm Alex.
I'm Mira, and today we're doing something different. We're going to walk through one of the biggest stories in the world right now. How did we get here? What actually happened, and what does it mean?
Let's go back to 2015.
2015. Okay, what happened in 2015?
Something big. Iran and six of the world's most powerful countries, the US, the UK, France, Germany, Russia, and China, all signed a nuclear agreement. It was called the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action.
Which is a very long name for.
Basically a deal. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program, no building weapons, strict limits on how much uranium it could enrich, and international inspectors allowed in to verify everything. And in return, the world lifted sanctions, the economic restrictions that had been strangling Iran's economy for years, cutting it off from international trade, from the banking system, from oil exports.
So, Iran gave up the nuclear ambitions, and the world gave it back its economy.
That was the idea, and for a few years it seemed to be working. Inspectors were going in, Iran was staying within the limits, and there was cautious optimism. But then came 2018.
What changed?
The United States, under Trump's first term, walked away from the deal, completely withdrew.
Why? It seemed like it was working.
That was exactly the argument from the other countries who signed it. But Trump's position was that the deal was too weak, that it had expiry dates, that it didn't cover Iran's ballistic missile program, that it wasn't permanent enough. So the US pulled out and reimposed sanctions, even harder ones.
And how did Iran respond?
Not immediately dramatically, but gradually, step by step, Iran started pushing past the limits in the deal. It began enriching uranium again, beyond what was allowed. And the levels kept rising. By the mid-2020s, Iran had enriched uranium to 60% purity.
Is that a lot?
To put it in context, nuclear power plants typically use uranium enriched to 3 to 5%. 90% is weapons grade. 60% is not a weapon, but it's uncomfortably close to the path that leads there. And that's what started genuinely alarming the international community.
So, after 2018, the deal was effectively dead.
On life support at best. Multiple attempts were made to revive it, negotiations in Vienna, indirect talks through Oman, but nothing stuck. And meanwhile, Iran kept enriching. The gap between diplomacy and the reality on the ground kept widening.
Okay, so the nuclear issue is simmering. Then what? Gaza?
October 2023, Hamas launches a massive attack on Israel, the deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. And Iran's role in that becomes a central question immediately.
Was Iran directly involved?
Iran denied direct involvement, but for years, Iran had reportedly been funding Hamas, providing weapons, training. Iran had built what it called an axis of resistance, a network of armed groups across the region that shared its ideology and relied on its support. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, various militias in Iraq and Syria.
So it wasn't just Iran, it was this whole web of groups.
Exactly. And Israel's response to October 7th wasn't just about Gaza. Over the following year, Israel systematically went after that entire network. The most significant moment, September to November 2024. Israel effectively decapitated Hezbollah's leadership in Lebanon. Senior commanders killed one after another. Hezbollah had been Iran's most powerful regional ally for decades. Suddenly, it was severely weakened.
So Iran was losing its pieces on the board.
One by one, and at the same time, inside Iran, the economy was deteriorating. The currency, the rial, had lost enormous value. Inflation was reportedly above 40%. Ordinary people were struggling badly, and the government was under pressure from all sides,
Weak externally and weak internally.
which is exactly the context that matters for what comes next.
So, June 2025, this is when it first went properly military?
Between Israel and Iran directly, yes. Here's what triggered it. The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, declared that Iran was violating its non-proliferation obligations for the first time in 20 years. And Iran's response, it announced a new secret uranium enrichment facility.
That feels like a very deliberate escalation.
Many analysts described it exactly that way. And Israel, which had long said it would never allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, acted. It launched strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, missile factories, senior military commanders targeted. This was not a small operation.
And the US?
Joined days later, striking the main enrichment sites, Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan. These had been the heart of Iran's nuclear program for years. The goal, according to both governments, was to set the program back significantly.
And Iran hit back.
Waves of missiles and drones into Israel. It was the most direct military exchange between the two countries in history. But, and this is important, it lasted only 12 days. Oman stepped in as mediator, there were intense back-channel negotiations, and a ceasefire was reached.
So it ended?
It paused. There's a difference. Because here's what didn't happen. There was no agreement, no deal, no resolution on the nuclear question. Just a ceasefire. And a ceasefire without a solution is, historically, just a countdown.
How long was the countdown?
About 8 months.
So after June 2025, what happened in those 8 months?
Iran's situation got worse. In September, new international sanctions were imposed. The currency went into free fall again. And then, in December 2025, the largest protest Iran had seen since the Islamic Revolution broke out across the country. People were furious. The economy, the infrastructure, the repression. It had been building for years.
And the US was watching all of this.
Actively, Trump, who had returned to office in 2025, publicly encouraged the protests. And when Iranian security forces cracked down violently in January 2026, killing thousands of people according to Iranian health officials, Trump threatened military consequences.
So the US started preparing.
The largest American military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq invasion. Aircraft carriers, bombers, tens of thousands of troops repositioned across the region.
That's not subtle.
Not at all. But here's the part that makes this whole story even more complicated. At the exact same moment the military was building up, the US and Iran were in nuclear talks in Geneva, through Oman as intermediary.
Wait, they were talking and preparing for war simultaneously?
That's geopolitics. On February 25th, just 3 days before the strikes, Iran's foreign minister said a historic agreement was within reach. The Omani mediator said significant progress had been made. Iran publicly restated that it had no intention of building nuclear weapons.
So there was a real chance this didn't happen.
Reportedly, yes, but Trump said publicly he was not thrilled with how the talks were going. And according to reporting from the Washington Post, Saudi Arabia and Israel had both been lobbying him heavily to act militarily. On February 28, 2026, the U.S. and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, nearly 900 strikes in the first 12 hours alone.
And just like that,
Just like that.
years of a collapsing nuclear deal, sanctions, a weakened regional network, A failed 12-day war that resolved nothing. Protests cracked down on. Talks that were apparently almost working. And then February 28th.
That's the spark. That's how we got here.
Which means the next question is, what happened after? What does a war like this actually cost the world?
Oil, shipping, inflation, the Strait of Hormuz. That's episode 5.
And it's not a small story.
It might be the bigger story.
Until next time, keep listening.
Stay curious.